would say is, if you him, you're gonna attract without trying. You don't even have to spit game, because baby, you is the game. You is the walking game piece. You don't even have to try. Like, you get the baddest girl in the room just for being you.
Good evening, gentlemen, and a few of you ladies that may be listening. This is Spiritual Art of War, back at it again with another episode. And this time we're going to be talking about one aspect of, relationships that's very important. And this is just from observation of what I've seen and just, experienced over the years, even before I became a believer. And this is what it is. Just like you've seen in the clip, if you're him, you don't have to do much. If you're him in a general sense, or if you do it for that woman, you don't have to do much. Okay? Less is more in that case. Okay? See, a lot of men, because they want to get a bigger pool of women to pull, they have to do different things to kind of make themselves more appealing or draw attention. This is basically what you call peacocking. So this is why a lot of men will add different things to themselves that will make them more appealing. And for example, they will start wearing certain type of clothing or jewelry, okay? Because it signifies, wealth or status, right? So that's something that men will do to broaden their pool of women that are attracted to them, not women that actually really want to be with them or find them appealing, because women are very much tied to resources, because historically, and just in the way a woman is hardwired, they're not meant to really secure an abundance of resources at a high level. Even when the playing field is level, women are not really able to do what men are capable of doing. Women are not even able to grind as hard as men generally. Okay? A lot of times, women will burn out a lot sooner. Of course, if there's heavy motivation for the sake of survival, they will grind, but they're really not built to do that for a long term, or even at certain levels of capacity, right? And with modern technology and industrialization, they're able to generate a lot of income via different sources, okay? Especially when you're talking about the simp economy. Now, when it comes to just raw attraction, there's men that don't need to have those other things, okay? And we see this with examples with the likes of King 6-8 the Great. I see a lot of comments from hurt men when they see King 6-8 the Great attracting women. And they'll say, oh, they're really into him because they think he's a basketball player. But you will literally see King 6-8 the Great tell women he's not a basketball player. He doesn't play basketball. He'll literally not even tell them that he's even an influencer. Okay? They'll ask him questions like, you've seen it. They'll ask him like, so what is it that you do? He'll say, I do what it takes. I do what it takes. So these women are not caring about whether or not he has all that money. Bro, trust me. Like, I knew guys, man, that were using their looks, and they were getting women, bro. Like, a lot of people don't understand. Like, there's women out there that will give money and take care of a man because he just does it for them on the looks department, bro. And I'm gonna give you an example. Jeremy Meeks, the guy that was in prison. He was, I think, from Stockton, and he was a Crip. He was locked up. He's a light-skinned dude with the blue eyes, and his mugshot went viral years back, and he ended up breaking up with his girlfriend, who he had kids with, who was like a nurse when he got out of prison. And he ended up with, like, I think a daughter of like a billionaire heiress, bro. and she was like spoiling this man. You know, he also got a contract, some modeling contracts as well, and he also ended up doing some movies. I think he did a couple of like either Tubi movies or like Netflix movies. So he acts now, and he also does modeling, and he's a millionaire, you know, after coming out of prison. And we're talking about a guy that hit, you know, a situation of going viral while he was in prison, you know. In fact, he talks about his story about how when he was went to the judge, and I think the judge was going to see whether or not they wanted to release him early from his sentence, and she was telling him like, oh, you've gone viral, you know. And he was like, what do you mean, what's viral? And he said, like, your picture's all over the internet. And he, you know, she saw that he had an opportunity to change his life, and I think he got let out early because of his opportunity to change his life due to, you know, his newfound fame. Okay, so a lot of men are butthurt by that, because the fact is that most men are not going to be, 95% of men are not going to be at the level of looks that can polarize the general population of women. Now, there are ways to have a halo effect, which is through, you know, fame, because you got a lot of men that are famous that were considered handsome after the fame, meaning like women were now say they're handsome. And you can see this. Tupac talked about it in his interviews when he became famous, about how women were calling him not handsome, saying he was too short, he was too skinny, and he went to a club the very next year where he was rejected by women at the club. And when he blew up and went to that same club, the same women that rejected him were going crazy over him. So that is actually a case where a man was not considered in that 5% of looks, but because of his fame, okay, which means, you know, of course, wealth, it's a status, and because eyeballs are on you and they're all eyes is on him, right? All eyes on me. Now women are automatically assigning good looks attributes or characteristics to a man that they wouldn't have otherwise probably found attractive. Okay? And then they'll say all this stuff about how he's this. They'll say, oh, he has a great smile. But when you look at, you know, Tupac's smile, he has a snaggletooth smile. Right? But they'll say, oh, his smile's so beautiful. Right? So they'll ascribe different attributes, physical attributes to him. You know? And that's not knocking him. I'm not one to judge a man's looks from the perspective of a woman, because I've always told you, women are not really, there's so many things that women are attracted to outside of a man's looks. Okay? And most men that are with beautiful women, it's not because of their looks. Okay? Most beautiful women do not have, especially natural beauties, do not have this strong desire to have a looks equivalent in a man. You know, it's not something that they care as much about as a woman that maybe was an ugly duckling, or a woman that is not as attractive. You know, that's the reason why you see the situation with Jeremy Meeks and the woman that he got with, the billionaire heiress woman. She was an average looking woman who was trying to probably compensate for her lack of looks by getting somebody else who can be good looking in her eyes, right? So that's the reason why you see like Biggie, you know, he was with some beautiful woman, even though he's not an attractive male, right? So they were, but yet the women were fighting for him. So you're telling me that those women couldn't have gone and, you know, tried to chase after Tyson Beckford, who was around in that era? You know, even if you look at some of the music videos that Lil' Kim did, she had like model men that were in those videos, but she was obsessed with Biggie, who was an obese man, right? Who was not attractive in the face, but he had all these other things that carried him, right? He had charisma, he had talent, he had the ability to be a leader, he had respect among men. Okay, he had fame, he had fortune. All these things, you know, made up for his lack of attractiveness. Okay, so, and even that's the same thing if you're him. Like, even in that same clip, Because if you're him, if you're Biggie in 1996 and you come to, you travel to Miami and you go to a club in Miami and you're Biggie, the girls is flocking too, right? You're not going to have to do much because you already got other things that have did the heavy lifting for you. So you walk in, you're not having to put forth a lot of effort because you're him. Okay? So that's why you always have to understand, if you're dealing with a woman that you're interested in marrying, okay, and building with, and I'm not talking about necessarily legal marriage, no, I'm talking about actual like religious / spiritual unification of a man and a wife. If you are interested in a woman, always factor in the early stages of you actually communicating with her, how much effort is she putting in? Because if you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, you will be doing a lot of the heavy lifting throughout the relationship, because what's happening is that you're having to compensate through so many different things to keep her interest going, versus her seeking you out, always wanting to communicate with you, always wanting to be around you. Okay? But if you're the one who's like if you're in the position where you're like, man, I gotta make sure I keep her happy. Oh, I gotta make sure that I do this and that. I gotta make sure I keep taking her out on all these dates. Oh, I gotta cash app her this money so she can know that I'm a provider. Like all these people telling you gotta be a provider. You start getting into that motion, you're showing exactly where you lie in that situation. And sometimes what happens is, because some men are conditioned to think this way, a lot of times a woman who doesn't require you, I don't mean by require you, because women are doing this stuff subconsciously. A woman that's already interested in you is not going to care about you putting in maximum effort. But if you are doing it and she really doesn't want you to do it because she's already into you, but you're doing all this, you're being extra, as they would say, you're being extra with your effort with her, she's going to get turned off, because she's going to notice that you're somehow insecure that you might lose her, and it's going to be off-putting. Remember that women are supposed to be servants of a man, so they're the ones who are supposed to be seeking your validation, not the other way around. Because technically a servant is replaceable. Okay? This is something you have to understand. When you go to other countries, and this is when you go to other countries where people have actual they have maids, they have cooks, they have drivers. Those maids, cooks, and drivers who are servants in these other countries, they themselves know that they are replaceable. So they seek the validation of the quote unquote master of the house. Okay? And they are more at ease when the master of the house is happy. So they are the ones that are going to try and ensure that they do their job right, and that they don't fall on the master's bad side. Because you are in a gynocentric, feminist, matrilineal, matriarchal society, you don't think that way. You don't look at a woman as a servant. You look at her as your equal, your partner. Okay? And therefore, you end up in this position where you're seeking her validation. And imagine a master trying to seek a servant's validation. That's crazy work. That's crazy work. Okay? So again, if you're him already, you don't got to, pay the cost to be the boss, like they say. You are the boss already. If she's got a way of making money, how that money is utilized is up to you. Pimps understand that principle. Although they're evil, they understand that principle of a woman's money is your money. And these women are out here all around the world, they're on the blade selling their bodies to give all that money back to a man that they respect. that just shows you the psychology of a woman. And these women be fine. Okay, and they'll be with a guy for years before they even turn renegades. You know what I'm saying? Or even never turn renegades, depending on like how strong that bond is, right? But that's, that's a whole different ball game. But I'm just showing you on a psychological level that a woman liking a man so much or respecting a man so much that the money she earns, she gives it to her man, like he controls it. You got marriages like that where both the man and the woman are working, but the financial decisions on what's to be done with the money is made by the man. I've met women who that's how they live, bro. They working, their husband works, but they've told me, yeah, when it comes to like what happens with the money that I make, it's my husband that decides. He's the one who puts in investments. He's the one that decides where we're going to live, what we're going to do with the money, if we're going to go on trips and things like that. And sometimes they'll even say that the money that they make is for, savings towards retirement. Like the woman will be like, yeah, my money's just really for, retirement. There's a certain percentage of it goes to like, investments for our future retirement, or, and then a certain percentage is for, my own feminine care or whatever. And they're cool with that because they respect their man that much. You know what I'm saying? Because in their eyes, that their man is him. They're heavily identify themselves with that particular man. Okay? So, but other men, they got to pay up. And, women are much more aware of like there's two things going on. There's a lot of like average to below average women that overvalue themselves. They think that they're higher on the value for men because of all the attention that they get because of social media. But then there's women out there that are really beautiful, and they really know that they're on that level because they know the men that are coming at them are like a lot higher level. It's not just random men. They getting blue check marks. They getting the famous men that are in sports and entertainment in their DM. So they know, hey, I gotta be a baddie, because there's no way, based on the, the woman that some of these men have been with, because they know the woman that compare themselves to the men, to the woman that these men have dated, and they know they're on and around that same level. So these women that know they're on that level, they will punish you because you're not that, and they're going to expect you to put a down payment for them to be interested in even dealing with you. A lot of times, though, men who are not at that level, they got to do an upfront payment, bro. They got to actually do that. A lot of women will even say stuff like, you got to cash at me to get my number. If you want to talk to me, you gotta send me some money so I know you're serious. I've seen many women say this. I've seen many women say this like on their IG or on social media over the years, bro. Especially ever since, like, I would say over the last like 7 to 8 years. Women been like, you gotta cash at me, you gotta spoil me, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. But they're not gonna require a guy like King 6'8" the Great to do that. They can't even talk crazy to a guy like that. Because they already know. They can't tell King 6'8" the Great, hey, if you want my number, you got to cash at me. They know he's going to be like, you crazy. He'll immediately go he'll immediately go and holler at the homegirl that's standing right next to her, and they'll fall out over him. You feel me? So they know who to do it to. These women are very much socially aware. And that's how some of these guys, and, after the whole Daphne Joy situation with Diddy, finding out that, basically, you really don't even need that much money to get a 50-cent baby mama, because if she was getting paid $10K to go to the Bahamas and to Turks and Caicos for 2 weeks with Diddy, mind you, all Diddy is doing is just buying an extra ticket, because the whether it's 1 or 2 people in the room's still the same price. So all he's doing is just really buying the flight ticket. You know what I'm saying? Now you could say he paid for food, he paid for food and alcohol while he was there, but that's nothing. He told her $10,000. She went and got a babysitter or somebody to look after her son that she had with 50 Cent, and she took that trip. So do the math. Do the math on how much it will cost. Bro, that's crazy work. Do the math on how much it would cost to have Daphne Joy for the night if for $10,000, which is for 2 weeks, which is 14 days. Go ahead and do the division, and literally, that's crazy work. But that just gives you an idea how much these women are for sale if they say no. If these women, if a dude walks up to a chick and she's on a level, or she like one of these like IG model type chicks, and you run into her at the store at a Whole Foods, and you tell her you want to holler at her, and she say, nah, I'm not interested. And you say, look, I got 2,500. I could 9 out of 10 they jumping at it. 9 out of 10 they jumping at it because they're not seeing 2,500 every day. And even if they make 20, even if they seeing 10,000 a month with whatever they do, even if they're getting child support from certain states, they have limitations on child support. So sometimes they might only be getting 5 bands a month on child support, and then they might be getting a little 3 to 4 bands off of whatever they model or any type of sponsor stuff they have. And then they're hoping for random men to send gifts to them, right? So, that's just what it is, man. But let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode.